Welcome again, everybody, to First Person, again sponsored by the Precision Strip Company in Minster, Ohio. As we talk about all the time, a wonderful place to work. They're always looking for good people. It's a good place to start a career or even finish one. They may be looking for you, so give them a call or check them out online. The address is scrolling across the bottom of First Person here. Again, the Precision Strip Company sponsors of First Person on Press Pros Magazine. Obviously, it is state tournament season in Columbus. Our guest this weekend is, or this week, is a guy that we've tried to do this for some time.
We sure have.
The pride of Findlay, Ohio. Second, the biggest thing in Findlay, second only to Marathon Oil.
I wish I could say that, but wonderful experiences. Still live there, actually.
Jerry Snodgrass, the new commissioner of the OHSAA. They call you now the executive director. Which is the better job?
For me, I'm a very old school guy when it comes to that, and I love the commissioner term. Oddly enough, it's mentioned in our Constitution, so in order to change it back, I have to get our members to change the Constitution. So I'm stuck.
Jerry and I go back a few years, and I certainly have enjoyed our relationship. He is grassroots with Ohio high school sports, because you've done it all. You've coached, you've been athletic director, you've taught, you've got a really good foundation of what this is all about.
I often say that I'm a product of it. You know, when I say rescued, I wasn't a horrible kid, but you know, at the same time, you know, I had some, you know, family issues when I was young, and I had high school coaches and junior high coaches that believed in me. And every single day I feel in some way that I'm giving back to them. When I got this job, the very first person I called was my high school basketball coach. Turned 80 years old, and you know, hopefully he's not watching this, but he cried. And that's just how powerful this business is for our youth, and I give back every day.
We have talked for some time about being able to sit out here and cover some issues, and we actually canvassed our marketing area or our readership area there with Press Pros, and give me a question that you'd like addressed by Jerry Snodgrass. I'm not sure we can do it all in 10 minutes here, but I will tell you this: what we don't get this morning, we'll transcribe and do in a written thing here in the days to come on Press Pros. The number one thing from everybody that I've talked with is the term competitive balance, and this is no surprise to you. It was the last words that Dan Ross said to me. We've made a good start, but there's a lot of work yet to do. What's the state of the union in your mind on competitive balance?
Well, you know, I think first of all, and I don't say this to place anything anywhere else other than in the realm that I have right now, but the competitive balance program was passed by our member schools, albeit relatively close. It was passed by membership, but in order to see the impact of it, and it was said at the time, it's going to take time. So making tweaks to it, or major changes, I should say, early on, I just don't think that's possible to do. We have to see its impact. We have seen a number of our schools who, because of where they're getting their kids or where their kids are coming from outside their district, have moved up in divisions. That was its intent. There's a number of them that have done that. However, is that the solution? You know, moving up a division and playing in a higher division, and if they're just as competitive or still winning state titles, is that meeting the purpose of competitive balance? So there's a lot of assessment, and I think it's not sitting back. When we meet regularly with that committee, we now have people come in and present to that committee, so it's very open. So if we're missing something, they can come in. So we now take minutes of those meetings. I will say this: the Competitive Balance Committee itself is probably the best demographic committee that we have, comprised of large school, small school, public, non-public, all areas of the state of Ohio. So I think we just have to give it some time to see if it's doing what it was set out to do.
All right, the second question, 1B to this, would be, people want to know, is this something that eventually is this a fight you can win? Is this not a fight, but is this something that ultimately there'll be a solution for, that's going to make the playing field fair for everybody?
I think there's two parts of that. What is making the playing field?
What constitutes fair?
Yeah, fairness. What constitutes fairness? I think that's a very, very tough question to ask. Two, I truly don't know if there is an answer. And I think people fail to realize a lot of times in the overall scope of things, legislative action, state legislators or the governor have enacted laws that allow kids to go from school to school. They allow them with open enrollment, things like that. So it's not, and I know that you know, there's a lot of the old guard talk public versus private. It is not public versus private. It is where kids are coming from to enter a school, whether that's a public school or whether it's a private school. So I don't know. I don't know if there is an answer. You know, I'm probably on the other end of the spectrum as a coach when my superintendents in my younger ages always taught me, no matter what, don't complain about the opponent, get better.
Get better.
And I mean, you know, I know a lot of people disagree with that. Competitive balance, by the nature of the words, you know, maybe pull somebody else down so others can get better. I understand that. I just grew up with a different concept.
No, and I did too, because when I played high school sports, you wanted to beat the best competition possible. Yes. That made the winning all the more sweeter. Let me ask you another question, and people ask me, this is a big issue out in our part of the country and all over 88 counties of Ohio now. How do we get more kids to participate? Because numbers are down. Football's down, basketball in some areas are down, and baseball's right upon us. There are people, there are schools that don't have enough kids out for baseball to play JV baseball. What's the answer, if there is an answer? What can we do to get more kids involved with sports?
Before I answer that, something that has to be considered is I'm not so convinced that we have less kids. I think maybe a little bit. I think a lot of those kids are going to other things. Lacrosse, one of the largest growing sports in the nation. Soccer continues to grow. It's one of the few sports that's continuing to grow. Bowling is continuing to grow.
Yeah.
Sports that we didn't have before. We'll call them emerging sports. Now, I'm not going to get into this route, but esports. Now, again, whether it's a sport or not. But the point is, I think some of them are going the other, you know, into other things. So we have to look at that. The other part of that, and I think it's very difficult, I can look at coaching from the outside in now. I have a very unique perspective. I sat on the bench, I stood on the sidelines, and I did that. When I'm looking from the outside in, and I look at how it has become year-round, and we have to look at this over 5 and 6 and 7 years, and it's very difficult to get accurate data on it, but we see so many kids, you know, I use the term, they're burned out. Mm-hmm. You know, they're tired of it by the time they get to be a certain age and just want to be a kid. And I think that's something that, unfortunately, the youth sport, off-season sport explosion. I mean, look at Dick's parking lot. Right. It's packed on a Saturday. We're not going to change it. So we've got to learn somehow to be vested with that out of season, with that youth sport group, and see how we can maybe go and develop some kind of partnership that we can keep kids.
Here's a question that I've been asked, and we talked a little bit before we turned the tape on, the issue of 50-50 tickets. Across the state of Ohio, I hear people say they want a percentage of our 50-50. That's not fair. We don't think, you know, that is our money to raise. Address the issue of the OHSAA getting a percentage of 50-50 sales at events.
Let me start with this. The OHSAA does not get any percentage of it, and I'll explain that in just a second. So I want to repeat that. The OHSAA does not get any percentage of a 50-50 that's conducted at a school, at a tournament contest, including at the state tournament. We do not get that. I've repeated that 3 times. And I understand how misleading things get out there. Now, second of all, there is a cut that is part of that. I say this very specific because in my previous 10 years, being the administrator of basketball, which included tournaments from sectional through state, it was a taboo thing to have 50-50 drawings at any tournament event. We tied that to gambling. And quite frankly, when you see a 50-50 of $24,000 between Marion Local and Coldwater,
you feel like Pete Rose.
People want it. I mean, but people want that. Yeah. It's part of Ohio sports. I'm sorry, but it is. Now, here's where I go with that. As the sport administrator, I did institute the ability to have 50-50 drawings at tournaments. People have no idea what a fight that was. But I am the one that proposed that to our board in my previous role, and our board accepted it. And in order to make it palatable, and most 50-50s by large organizations, the Blue Jackets, any larger organization, professional franchise, usually puts the money, the 50 part of it, toward the softer side of the sport. In other words, some form of foundation. And there's where I get into answering that originally. The cut of that goes to a foundation It's a separate 503c. It does have the name OHSAA Foundation, and that's why people get misled. But the OHSAA Foundation is totally independent of our organization. It's a separate nonprofit, and here's the important thing. That money goes to that foundation to pay for the largest, and I would contend the best, student leadership conference in the nation for our student athletes. And anyone who has attended that, I think, would attest to that. It's a phenomenal event that's held in October of every year. It is not conducted by our office. It's conducted by the foundation. No one in that foundation is paid a salary. All that money goes toward paying for that leadership conference.
There's only so much we can cover, you know, here in 10 or 12 minutes like this, and I will simply ask you this. You know, you give a very good acceptance speech or presentation speech when the trophies are done, and it always amazes me when the trophies are handed out how you've been to every coffee shop, you know, every bar and grill in the state of Ohio. You've been everywhere in 88 counties. How you get all that information as the door sign about all these different communities. How many miles, how many years, how many cars have you worn out getting to all these places? I'm
glad, first of all, you said every coffee shop first instead of every bar and grill. You know what, though, in small town, small town Ohio, I'm a history buff for one. And one of the biggest thrills I had when I took this job, when I got into the office 10 years ago, was the ability to see the state and to see people. And I've often said in our business, if I went to Ironton, or if I went to Coal Grove,
there you go,
and I had a car problem.
My hometown.
Absolutely. Do you know that I could pick up and I could call someone in that town and I could get help? I think that's the power of athletics. And I really want to embrace that. And so I'm telling you that when any town is here or any team to win a state title, even a runner-up, it's my due diligence to know what that means to that community. And I think that's the great thing we have in the state of Ohio. I've been to a lot of them. I have more miles on my cars than you could ever imagine. I hardly ever, shouldn't say it, I hardly ever say no when somebody asks me to come out to a community to talk or to present. And I just think that is one of the greatest things I have in this job.
Well, you certainly impressed me by your knowing your way around Minster.
Absolutely.
And New Bremen and Maria Stein, and you've been everywhere.
Yeah, I keep saying that Chickasaw has probably the largest per capita officials per capita of any city in the United States or town in the United States.
Home of Ben Kramer.
Absolutely, it is.
Home of Ben Kramer and Don Kemper.
Absolutely.
All right, Jerry Snodgrass, thank you so much for your time. Always fun to sit down because you represent something that's very near and dear to everybody, especially the people who read and listen to Press Pros Magazine. You make this possible for us to get to those people and bring the events and the coverage that we do, and I thank you for that. They thank you for that.
Well, I thank you too, because when I embarked on this job, I talked about together we can. What it takes to make the opportunities available that we're going to see on a court for these kids. They are memories of a lifetime. It does take you. It takes the media. It takes the fans. And it's not just me and it's not just our organization. It's all of us, and together we can, and I thank you for that.
Wraps up this version of First Person, again with Jerry Snodgrass, the Executive Director of the OHSAA, brought to you again by the Precision Strip Company in Minster. I'm sure you know where that is and know something about that. Again, a great place to work to start a career or finish one. Check them out, call them, or go to them online. As I said before, the address is scrolling across the bottom of the screen. Wraps up this edition. Thank you for what your support means to us here at Press Pros Magazine. Is what we do each and every week throughout the year. We'll see you again next time with another edition of First Person. Have a great weekend, everyone.